Hundreds of angry villagers were dragging Ogunade through the village square. His hands were bound. His body was broken. Women cursed him. Men spat on the ground as he passed. Children threw stones. This was the same man who had spent years protecting every single one of them. And across the square, lying in the dust not 30 feet away, were the bodies of his wife and his children. He had not betrayed his village. He had not caused the death of the prince he loved like a son. He was completely innocent, and the people dragging him through the dirt knew exactly what they were doing. This is the story of the greatest warrior his village ever produced, and the curse that followed them for the next 100 years. Stay until the end of this video, because what Ogunade said right before he died cursed an entire village for over 100 years. Don't forget to subscribe, like and share, because this is one of the most powerful stories of betrayal, conspiracy and justice you will ever hear. And it all started with a lie told by the very men the village trusted most. Ogunade had been fighting since he was barely old enough to hold a spear. While other boys chased games in the bush, he was already training before sunrise. While other young men boasted about battles they had never seen, Ogunade was already fighting them. By the time he reached his mid-20s, he had become something his village had never produced before. A warrior who actually won. Not sometimes, not mostly, every single time. He pushed back 3 rival kingdoms in 4 rainy seasons. He walked into ambushes that should have killed him and walked back out carrying injured men on his shoulders. When enemy forces burned the eastern farms and everyone said the village was finished, it was Ogunade who recaptured every inch of that land before the week was over. The king trusted him completely. The people wove his name into songs. And the young prince, the king's only son, a boy with fire in his eyes and more courage than common sense, followed Ogunade everywhere, desperate to learn everything the great warrior knew. Ogunade trained him patiently, taught him combat, strategy, how to read a battlefield before the first spear was raised. To Ogunade, that boy was not just a future king. He was like a son. But not everyone was celebrating. Several village elders, men with titles and secret arrangements Ogunade knew nothing about, had been quietly working against their own village for years. Hidden alliances with rival kingdoms, agreements that filled their own compounds while their people went without. Every battle Ogunade won threatened to unravel everything they had built in the dark. His loyalty to the king made him dangerous. His bond with the prince made him untouchable. So, they made a decision. Ogunade had to go. The opportunity came during one of the most critical battles the village had ever faced. A powerful enemy launched a coordinated assault, larger, better armed, and more organized than anything the village had seen in years. The prince insisted on riding into battle alongside Ogunade, despite every warning. Ogunade agreed. He believed he could protect the boy. He had protected everyone else. What Ogunade did not know was that the corrupt elders had already sent word to the enemy. Battle positions, troop movements, the prince's exact location on the battlefield. An ambush was waiting. When it was sprung, chaos swallowed everything. Warriors scattered, the formation collapsed, and through the smoke and the screaming, Ogunade fought desperately towards the prince, cutting through man after man. But it was not enough. He reached the boy just in time to catch him as he fell. The prince died in Ogunade's arms. Ogunade knelt in the blood-soaked earth, holding the boy he had trained and loved like his own child. He made a silent promise. He would bring the prince home, and he would find out what went wrong. But while Ogunade was still on that battlefield grieving, the elders were already back in the village, moving quickly, deliberately, the way men move when they have been waiting a long time for their moment to finally arrive. They told the king that Ogunade had sold battle secrets to the enemy, that he had deliberately led the prince into the ambush, that the village's greatest warrior had been working for their enemies all along. The village was devastated by the loss of the prince, and grief, real, overwhelming, unbearable grief, does not stop to ask questions. It just needs somewhere to put itself. The elders provided that somewhere. And the king, shattered by the loss of his only son, listened. Nobody went to Ogunade's compound with questions. Nobody waited for him to return from battle and speak for himself. The villagers stormed his home while he was still miles away, still carrying the weight of the prince's death on his chest. His wife stood at the entrance and pleaded for mercy. She told them her husband was a loyal man, that he had given everything to this village, that they were making a terrible mistake. Nobody listened. By the time Ogunade crossed back through the village gates, exhausted, grieving, expecting the silence that follows a terrible battle, the smoke from his burnt compound was still rising into the sky. He walked toward it slowly, then faster. Then he was running, and when he finally saw the bodies of his wife and children lying in the dust, something in Ogunade that no enemy had ever broken shattered completely. The ropes came next, then the crowd, then the screaming. Ogunade did not fight them. He had nothing left to fight for. They dragged him to the center of the square. The king sat on his throne and refused to meet his eyes. The elders stood close by, their faces carved into careful expressions of grief, hiding underneath something that looked very much like satisfaction. Ogunade was given no trial, no chance to speak, no opportunity to lay out a single piece of truth in front of the people who had known him his whole life. The verdict had already been decided before he arrived. Badly wounded and barely standing, Ogunade raised his head and looked out across the faces of his village. Every person he had ever gone to war for, every life he had ever protected, every family that still existed because of what he had sacrificed. He looked at all of them and he spoke. I gave this village my strength. I gave this village my victories. I gave this village my loyalty. And you repaid me with the blood of my children. He raised his hand toward the sky. From this day forward, every battle fought by this village shall end in defeat. For every war you wage, your sons shall fall. Generation after generation, your men shall decrease until there are not enough warriors left to even defend your gates. Only when my name is cleansed and justice is done shall this curse be broken. Ogunade died that evening, and the curse began the very next morning. The first battle after his death ended in defeat. So did the second, and the third. Sons went to war and did not come home. Fathers buried boys who had barely learned to fight. Women stopped celebrating when children were born male, because male children in that village carried a death sentence written in the dead man's final breath. Decades passed. The village grew weaker with every generation. Neighboring kingdoms expanded. rival villages that Ogunade had once crushed into submission began to suckle closer. And no matter what the village tried, new strategies, new alliances, new weapons, the result was always the same. Defeat. Death. More men lost. The people began to whisper among themselves that Ogunade's spirit still watched from somewhere beyond the hills, that he had not gone quietly into the next world, that he was still there, waiting for the one thing he had never received, justice. But justice requires truth, and the truth had been buried just as deliberately as the man himself. The confession came from the most unexpected place. Many years later, an elderly man, a descendant of one of the conspirators, lay dying in his compound. He had carried the secret his entire life. He had watched his village suffer under a curse that he knew the origin of. And in his final hours, the weight of it became too heavy to take with him into the next world. He called his children close, and he told them everything. The hidden letters, the agreements with enemy kingdoms, the plan to lure the prince into the ambush, the lies told the king while Ogunade was still on the battlefield, mourning the very death they had arranged. Every detail, every name, every crime. The village was horrified. The descendants of the guilty elders were stripped of every title their families had carried for generations and banished from the land. Their names were scrubbed from village history as though they had never existed. And in a ceremony attended by every man, woman, and child remaining in that village, Ogunade was publicly declared innocent. They built him a shrine. They gave his family proper graves with proper honors. They erected a monument in the center of the very square where he had been dragged through the dirt. And they created a festival in his memory, held every year so that no generation would ever forget what had been done and what it had cost. Years later, when war came again to their borders, the warriors who marched out did so beneath a banner bearing Ogunade's name. For the first time in generations, they won. Warriors came home. Mothers embraced sons they had feared would never return. The village, broken for so long, finally began to breathe again. In the village square, children gathered at the base of a massive statue. A warrior carved in stone, one hand raised toward the sky, a spear in the other. An elder sat among them and spoke quietly. A village can survive its enemies, but it may never survive the lies it tells itself. Ogunade never got to see his name cleared. He never got to see justice served. He died in the same square where he had once been celebrated, surrounded by the same people he had once protected, betrayed by the same village he had given everything to. But the truth, no matter how deep they buried it, refused to stay in the ground. And the curse, no matter how long it lasted, was never stronger than the justice that finally broke it. Some men are not appreciated until they are gone. Some truths are not told until it is too late. And some villages never recover from the day they chose a lie over the man who deserved the truth. Loyalty should never cost a man everything. If this story moved you, subscribe, like, share, and leave a comment below. There are more stories like this one coming.